So the other one is, the current pandemic that we have. Certain people, individuals, can feel more traumatic than others. So, for example, if a family and a child who are not feeling welcome in the home, and they're being trapped in the home with people who's supposedly giving them safe space, they will not be able to having that safe space emotionally and perhaps physically as well, right? The one on the top right, and that is the historical understanding. Now, in I think in 1970s or 1980s, that understanding of trauma is being expanded. So it is more towards the all the everyday life experiences that we have, um, and it's impacting our internal system, our psychological state, right? So bullying, for example, is one of the things that can have an impact for children or anyone, even in adulthood, right? And the one on the bottom, I'm trying to convey special children who are feeling not being seen, not being heard, not being loved. They're feeling emotionally or physically neglected by the family who is supposed to be as a caring um, people in their life, right? Cool. Now I'm going to go to the next one. Please let me know if it's, can you see the PDF screen move to the next one? What can you see? I just want to make sure you can see the same. What is your story? Wonderful, wonderful. Now, before we begin to the, to the next screen and next elements, I just want to have a quick check-in. What made you guys come here? What made you guys interested in this discussion? Anybody want to have a go?
I'll say I'm a coach, so obviously trauma is very interesting to me. Plus, I've got mental illness in my family, and so I always have wondered whether trauma caused that, or whether trauma has played a factor in mental illness, or whether it's completely separate. So I'm interested in understanding it better.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Christina. Graciela is, I'm learning about the impact trauma has on people. Wonderful.
With myself, my wife and I have been just discussing and broaching for topics, so it was a really good opportunity. As a father of 4 kids as well, I had a couple of children that experienced a lot of bullying at school. So as a parent, I want to be clued up as to how this may impact them as they grow up, and what we can do to facilitate and help and assist them, and to make sure it doesn't have an ongoing negative impact in their lives.
Thank you for sharing that, as well. That's very great to know, and I hope this discussion can be a pathway to get that understanding of that moving forward. Anyone else would like to share? Annie?
I am also a coach, and I work in student support services. So I work with a lot of students who, have been impacted with small and big events in their lives. And I live in Cambodia, which was a war-torn country just 40 years ago. So it's just interesting for me and to understand so I can better serve them.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And you are doing coaching to kids then, to teenagers? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Anybody would like to share some insights in terms of why they're here? I'm just curious to know. All right. let's go then. Let's go to the next one, and then I'll share a bit of my story a bit later on. Okay. So let's explore what trauma is. So in essence, I found these two quotes from psychologists to be very interesting and very insightful for me. One is, trauma is essentially unprocessed memory of the experience, right? And trauma is very personal. So it's very, and thus it's very subjective. Thus, we cannot put our own glass or our own lens when we are discussing about trauma, and we try to judge other people or other children, that, you know, why make it such, you know, making comments such as, that is not such a big deal, that feels like okay, right? So again, trauma is very personal. I'm just gonna bid in a few more people coming in. All right, and trauma is basically a perceived threat that overwhelms us and our ability to respond. This is a quote by Dr. Peter Levine, who is a somatic psychologist. And I love this quote here on the right-hand side. Trauma is personal. It does not disappear if it's not validated. When it is ignored or invalidated, the silent or screams continue to be internally heard only by them. And it's only when someone enters the pain and hears a scream, then healing can begin. So trauma, what Dr. Gabor Mate says is this: trauma is not what happens to you, but what happens inside of you. Right? And I was what I was curious when I'm studying this, I was curious about how does it work, you know, from the body and the mind perspective. And I came across the mind-body connection, or the brain function. Now, if it's okay, we'll deep dive a little bit more in this, because this will give a fundamental understanding of how trauma works in the body, especially in the brain and in the body. Is that okay? All right, just jump into chat if that's okay. Use the chat function as well. So I'm going to try to make, sorry. I'm going to try to make this bigger, hopefully, if that's okay. Now, can you see? All right, wonderful. So essentially, in our brain functions, there's two elements that we just need to understand at the basic level for our discussion today. All right. There's a brain function that is called the limbic system, which is the amygdala, which is here, the small part here, and also the hippocampus. All right. And then there's another element, which is called the prefrontal cortex, which is this one. All right, I think it is the one that stays in the front. Now, the relationships between the two systems are amazingly complex. Obviously, this is our brain structure after all. However, there's high level understanding we need to understand. I would like to convey here. Amygdala is one of the functions for amygdala is our emotional center. Right? It is like akin to a central alarm system, that if there's anything that is feeling like a threat, it will convey send the signals to everything in the body, right? And to everyone, everyone and everything, right? Something is coming that is a threat, and then it's signals to everyone. The other one is hippocampus. Hippocampus are the one that is managing retain the data and the memory. Okay, and the third one is our prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, or the PFC, are the one. It's a higher level function. It's for our learning, it's our planning, it's our etc. But one of the things that we need to do in terms of the emotional part is they are the one that is dampening or making things a bit logical for emotions. Now, how does this work, for example? when we are dealing with a child, and the child is triggered by their emotion, who here has kids? I have kids. I have 13-year-old son, 13-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and 3-year-old son. So when a child is throwing all sort of emotional heaviness, they're crying, they're angry, whatever the case may be, that is their amygdala are the one that is being triggered, right? It's all lights up. Now, when you try to communicate with your child logically, why, and then you say something like, why are you make such a big fuss of this? You are trying to convey a logical position, logical statement in the prefrontal cortex. But then at the same time, the amygdala is sending signals that, hey, I am not safe. I'm doing things here because something is not safe within me. So we cannot have, trying to communicate with their PFC, because something in there is just flowing, flooding, right? So one of the way, for example, and I'm going on a tangent here. One of the way for us to be able to connect with them, with the child, is connect with them emotionally first, right? Calm that amygdala down, and then you can have that logical discussions with the child after he's coming down, after he's feeling safe. Is that explanations okay? Is there any other insights? What's coming up for you guys? Connection before correction. That is true, Amy. That is excellent. What's coming up for you? Any insights, Graciela, Christina? Or are you pointing? Are you putting your finger?
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the amygdala being flooded and the child feeling unsafe, and the child throwing a tantrum and manipulating you?
Oh, that is, how do you know that if the child is manipulating you? That's another question, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So
how
that's,
can you tell the difference?
That is, how can you tell? I think that is based on your understanding of how your child behave. That's for me, right? Because to be able to manipulate, then he needs to be able to use the prefrontal cortex, because that's a planning function. Because in order to manipulate, the PFC needs to be engaged. But then how do we know that is the case? That is based on your understanding and relationship with that child.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Yes, of course, Emmy.
Yeah, I really like what you said, Sidki. So to add on to what you said, a child who's genuinely experiencing overwhelming emotions, there is nothing really in the outside world, in the external world, that would change that. So you could offer them a lolly, you could offer them punishment, anything logical would not work, right? So you have to work on the emotions first. You have to get to a level where they're ready to actually listen, but also share. And a kid that is truly using tears and tensions to manipulate you, anything in the external world might be able to change that or impact that. Or for example, if you went, okay, fine, do you want to go to the park then? Let's go. They would probably be immediately be ready to stop crying and go with you. So that to me would be the difference. They're putting it on. So it's like what Sidki said, like the PFC would be working then.
Yeah. Wonderful. And Christina, what age are we talking about in terms of your question?
Sorry, someone else is controlling the sound. I was just trying to think of a situation when my son was younger, and he probably would have been about 5. Yeah.
Okay.
About 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just I think wanting to get his own way.
Yeah. Okay. That's something that yeah, something that is need to have a bit a deeper understanding of what's going on in terms of the relationships, right? All right.
Yeah.
Is it okay
Yeah,
if we move
cool.
on to the next slide?
Oh yes, please, please.
Wonderful. Ooh, hold on. Okay. So let's explore in terms of trauma reactions and symptoms. Now, before we begin on this particular part, is it okay if I share a little bit of my personal story? Yeah, all good? Okay. And this is something that is perhaps coming up for me not very recently, but in the past between 3 to 4 years. So it's been going on for the past 3 to 4 years, except in the past 12 months. So what happened is at work in particular, there's a number of things that makes I'm currently working in the mining industry. I just joined in this mining company on December 2020. But before that, I was working for another global resources company for 3.5 years. During those 3.5 years, there's many things that came up to me in terms of anxiety, right? What those anxiety coming for me, how it looks like was like this. There's a physical changes within my body. I keep becoming very feeling those anxiety moments. Heart rates is getting faster. I keep questioning myself in terms of how I perform at work and all that. That's because of certain things that is happening at work at that time. And the first 6 months of this year, when I'm receiving big projects, I felt that my body is, in terms of the anxiety that is coming up, I feel like there's how can I say, other than questioning myself and self-belief and development and all that, there's a physical reactions. There's a number of times that I just want to vomit. I just want to go to the bathroom because something inside me just wanting to, going out of control. And then physically, I feel a lot of body ache and whatnot because of the stressful response that I have, right? And another thing is this. Before I was working on this trauma reaction, inner child healing and all that, despite the fact that I want to be the best father that I can be for my child, there's a number of times that I will feel very triggered, especially becoming fairly aggressive in terms of my tone, right? So I have those fight response in certain way. And that makes me curious, what is actually going on inside me? Why am I feeling that way? Because, I question in terms of how I'm doing and all that, right? So traumatic reaction is simple as this. If your reaction seems to be out of proportions to the situations, it's usually something else is triggered. You are not triggering to the current situations, but you are actioning, or you are reacting to something that happened in the past, right? Now, I would like to get some feedback here. Just have a ponder upon the moment in the past 6 months and past 1 week, whatever. Is there anything happened to in your life that makes you feel, this is something that is out of the ordinary? I shouldn't feel this way, even though the request is not something that is, something that is minimal. Is there anything that you can share with us? Anything at all from the chat?
So do you mean like, have we had a situation where we've overreacted? Yeah.
That you feel that it can be something out of the proportions of the situations?
Oh yeah, I sometimes overreact. Totally shouting.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
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 And but I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. I do know why. Yeah.
So one of the trigger response that is very common to us is those 4F, the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Now, the fight is basically our body, our basically reacting that we need to, reacting aggressively, whether that's by tone, whether that's voice, whether that's physical, right? When you are on a flight or a freeze, is basically you just want to get away from that situations, right? It's like a difference between I think I read one of the psychologists said when you see a bear on your hiking path, one of the things that you want to do is just run. However, if the bear is already on top of you and already ready to attack you, some people will just freeze. They pretend to be dead. That's how the difference is going to be, and you're likely to be disassociating from that moment because you just don't want to be there, right? And the other one is fawn. Fawn is something that is, who knows fawn?
Yeah, placation maybe. It's something like that. Garnering sympathy. Or...
Yep, close. Yep. So fawn is a reaction that you just want to be becoming a people pleaser. You just want to say yes to everything that the other person asks you to do, right? I personally have all between fight and fawn. That's my primary trigger. So how it comes up is, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling flooded, when you're feeling insecure, right? And one of the things that I actually found is this: you're going to go into unresourceful coping strategy, which is addiction, right? Because what Dr. Gabor Mate and other psychologists assert is this: that trauma is a gateway for addiction. Now, addiction doesn't only mean it's alcohol and all those substances, right? It's not only that, but it's much more than that. Anybody want to have a go in terms of what sort of addiction that we're talking about?
Food?
Yep, can be.
Shopping?
Definitely. Yes, definitely.
Social media.
Yep.
Technology in general. Two things. The first one, I agree. Cleaning, or Graciela's mentioned in the chat. Technology in general. There was one person who said, if the first thing you do when you get up in the morning is check your phone, then there's something wrong. And there was a very popular article about there being a rehabilitation camp in China for people who are addicted to the internet and technology. Like, there's actually such a thing. Could I also just make one point, like back to disproportionate responses? Like, I think prejudice is a, prejudice-driven responses are like, I think I see it everywhere I go. They don't have to be, everywhere you go, like, I don't know, like one of the first things I noticed when I came to Australia was, everyone has a footy team. That doesn't have to be a bad thing, but, that's not a bad thing, but anyway. So I just thought I'd, I was wondering if that's also an example.
It can be an example. I mean, especially if it's over the top reactions on that prejudice, right? And yes, addiction to sex or porn, to certain patterns that we know can be harmful. Graciela, thank you for that. And for example, another example is gaming. One of my unresourceful coping strategy before I was doing this work is doing, gaming on, for example, on PS4 on a few hours a night. And that is one of the things that we need to understand about this unresourceful coping strategy is it's trying to make us not feeling those emotions that we just trying to hide. We're just trying to put under us, right? Because as a child, I didn't know how to process my emotions when I'm feeling a certain way. So when I'm stressing at work and I'm meeting with my family and I cannot, for example, I cannot talk about my certain emotions, I go to gaming because for me, it's just to numb those feelings. Because I don't want to feel the stress from work. And yeah, the other one is, I have those traits of perfectionism as well. So if we don't give our children the techniques and the tool to be able to manage emotions, then then there's a likelihood that they will go into any of the unresourceful coping strategy. Now, from outside, those coping strategies can look normal. You want to be some people, for example, become a work addict, right? They want to stay at work or in the office or do whatever the thing is until late at nights because they're trying to avoid a certain feelings. They want to avoid a loneliness, for example. They want to avoid having interactions with their spouse because it's getting too much. You're getting to overstress, right? Or they going to the gym, for example. They just want to go to the gym because of such and such, right? So it can be anything. The underlying difference is as long as the underlying is the intent. What is the intent underlying those strategies? It can be resourceful if it's aligned with the values and the principles that you have, right? Any other insights coming from there? Feel free to put in a box. Painkillers in anything but the name. Yes, it's numbing, totally, right? So one of the interesting point or interesting learning for me is life experiences, including trauma, will affect our brain in terms of the wiring within the brain, and will also impacting our gut. So many psychologists reported that people who is having those childhood trauma, experiencing childhood trauma, will have some sort of irritable bowel syndrome, whether that's going to be through constipations or diarrhea, whether it's going to be on hold or just pass through. I experienced it myself in the past few years, right? And it's still coming up. So, for example, whenever one of the things I remember a few months ago when I received one of the biggest project that I have worked with at work being handed down, out of then feeling of this feelings of not good enough and question myself and my self-worth and all that kind of stuff, I can, when I feel the stress, I feel it in my body in terms of my what do you call this one, shoulder blade, and it just pops. I was like, what is that? And then suddenly I have ulcers, and then I have irritable bowel syndrome, movements. It's just interesting how I, for me, when I started to get my awareness of it, how it just changed the whole thing, right? Now, one of the underlying thing whenever we have those trauma reactions is this: shame is the most powerful emotions. It's the fear that we are not good enough, right? So I remember having those conversations with my clients. One of my clients, and she she had trouble in terms of reaching out for help, right? Because she feel that everyone else needs are higher than her needs. So she will suppress, she will serve everybody else, but excluding herself. Now, when I asked for, let's deep dive in this, what's going on, and then she said, and when we go, in terms of a few sessions down the track, and she said, I remember the conversations, the event or the incident that I had with my parents. When I was 5 years old, she said, when I was showing my biggest emotions, crying, and etc., her father shuts her down immediately through a tone, through a physical, and then she feel afraid. And she said, and he said, why are you, why are you crying for? Why are you crying? Can't you just, be quiet or just shut up? Because your mom needs you. Your mom needs you just to be quiet because she has her own problem. And then from that on, she just, saying to herself, oh, my mother needs is on top of my needs. And in order for me to be able to get an attention, becoming loved, is I need to put her needs first. Right? I'll be the best child that whom my parents want me to do, and I'll just serve them. And in the end, she has a lot of anxiety in her body, and mentally, and also in her body. Right? Any insights? What's coming up for you guys?
It reminds me of the saying that boys shouldn't cry, and I made sure
Yes.
that, like, when I told my son, that I let him cry, and I just checked in with him, and he's like, yeah, no, I never felt that I was never allowed to cry. So, but that was what was around that age, that boys should never cry.
Yes. I remember one of my trauma reactions at the moment is perfectionism, right? And basically that's a fawn. It will be difficult for me to say no to everyone. I remember the first 10 years, 12 years of my career, I would take any projects that I get, just because I want them to see me as a valid team member. Right? And the other thing is I have a very difficulty about perfectionism. I need to have everything in line, and that's creating a high standard within me, and that's creating reactions if a person or people don't do anything within my standard. Right? I become either a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Right? And when I'm doing this inner child work with a few coaches and therapists, yeah, thanks for that, Amy. I think perfectionism is one of the it's socially acceptable and socially becoming like a positive trait. If you're a perfectionist, that means you're a high achiever. But then there's a difference between high achiever and perfectionist. It's basically the way they manage their emotion internally, right? So thanks for that, Amy. Now, when I was doing the work, one of the things that came up for me was when I was growing up, my family didn't know how to manage or respond to my big emotions. So when I was showing anger, when I was showing sadness, especially those two, I would be locked in the bathroom or locked in the room, and just being left for hours, or I don't know. For me, it was hours, but for them, it was probably shorter, right? But then at that time, what I want to do is just really, I just want my parents just to acknowledge me. I just want my parents to value me. Hey, I need them. Can you just, see me that I'm here, right? And they just let me. They just let me. And one of the things, the response from there is, I keep seeking validations from my parents. So whatever I do in terms of work, I try to seek validation from them indirectly, subconsciously, that, hey, Sid, you are doing great. You have achieved a lot. And I was seeking those validations from my work colleague, from my project, from my manager, saying, hey, Sid, you're doing well. But then internally, I feel like, have I really doing well? I keep questioning myself, because actually what I want to have is just a validation from my parents. Yeah, thank you, Graciela. Yes, so compassionate is really the key. Compassion is really the key. And the thing is, when I'm doing this work, I don't mean to devalue in terms of my parents did, right? So whenever we are doing this work, sorry, suddenly my Siri is on. I have no idea why. It's like, beep, beep. Hello, what can I do for you? Anyway. So whenever we are doing this work, be compassionate. Especially, I need, I have more compassionate understanding to my parents, because my parents only did that because they don't know what else to do. And perhaps it also give an insight that, hey, that was how they were also being treated when they're showing their big emotions. No one else know how to do. I was born and raised in Indonesia. However, my parents was busy entrepreneurs. So between me and my siblings, we all each have a sitter, a babysitter for each, and also we have housemates to look after us physically. Yeah. So I hardly see my parents then, but then when I showing my emotions that I just want to be held by them, they have no idea how to do it. Cool. Any other insight? Thumbs up if it's Lukman, hands up. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Did you want to finish that? Or?
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Just 2 quick points. Combining what Christina brought up and what you said just now, Siki. I'm always amazed at people who can recognize that compassion solves so many problems, because I think, as Emmy pointed out earlier, that like compassion tends to be abused. It's actually a point my father makes very often. And then Christina brought up the idea of how there are things of the times. Nowadays, when my family flips on the TV and we watch like Homes and Gardens TV, you have the what are their names? The Property Brothers, and they're doing all this wonderful home remodeling. But when I was like in kindergarten, elementary school, people would often say, no, that kind of work is for girls. And so it just got me thinking, like, was there ever a trend in our time that, compassion is not the answer? Like there was a time when everyone thought that compassion is weakness. It's a very common thing people throw around. And the second one is just a quick apology to everyone. So I hope I didn't offend anyone with the quote on technology. Like, if you saw me, you'd know that I have at least 2 computers on my person at all times. So, it applies to me as well. So just sorry about that. If anyone was offended.
I think that applies to a lot of us. I'm pretty much the same as well. And something that we try, I'm just addressing the second question first. Something that we are all struggling with, I think, striving for, to be more having those connection with the people around us, and technology somehow is replacing that. We're seeing as replacing that. Going to your first question, I think yes. I think for me at least, right? For me during that if I'm recalling those childhood moments, seems to be and I was growing up in Indonesia. There was a culture, adat, right? That we have to do a certain things, that there are for example, kitchen is not a place for men, it's a place for girls only. But then I love doing things in the kitchen, and because my parents have a restaurant at that time, I would spend a lot of time in the kitchen. And if I'm showing crying, there were just crying. I don't think it's only, at least from my culture and from my the way I'm bringing up, is crying is not acceptable for even girls. So we just need to shut it down, right? Yeah, unfortunately that is the case. But then I think in terms of that boys don't cry, men should hold it together and all that kind of stuff, that is very prevalent, I think, in many different cultures and world, unfortunately. Any other insights? Cool. Let's
children. Sorry,
No,
my muting partner is not very mutable. Children, I say mute and then he has to move it. Children should be seen and not heard. That's another one.
Yes.
So that shuts them down. And I was told things like never ask an adult their age. Never question an adult, like adults with the authority, and we just had to listen and do exactly what adults said. So it shuts creativity down. Yeah. And curiosity.
That's true. That's true. I agree with that. It shut down a lot of things, right? Because we can't question the adults. Adults is like the powerful figure, and if we and that's creating problem. And this is what I can see, that I can foresee, and this is perhaps I'm happy to be wrong as well, right? If we start shutting down those, you can't question me because I am an adult, and and all that. Now imagine when they are when going to the teenagers, and we just say to ourselves, why do you never talk to me? Right? And we are being curious, why are you always talking to your friends but not me? How can I redo this? And they are now giving their peers more important than the parents, while at that time we are the one who's supposedly having more stronger connection, right? Becoming a safe home base for children to be able to come to us when they have any issues outside the house.
Absolutely. And I think that when you're in that environment of not being able to speak, you also don't know how to make choices, and you also don't know, so you live by circumstances rather than choices. So you are blown by whatever is happening in your life, as opposed to consciously choosing where you want to go, what you want to do, and how you want it to be. You don't think that you have choice because you've been conditioned, I suppose, to be controlled by adults.
Yes. Or from that, and thank you for raising that, Christina. The one thing that came to my mind is this. I have a close family member, and one other thing, what we mentioned is trauma is something that is very subjective, right? So even if within siblings they are experiencing the same cues and the same behavior and all that kind of stuff, the way they internalize it are totally different, right? One person may become still high functional and become perfectionist. The other one is non-functional, and not able to, not even have an understanding of how they can cope with the world. They always need to seek guidance and seeking feedback from the bigger parent or bigger adults on how they need to make decisions. Correct. So because I have I have experienced it, I have witnessed it, where this person is keep seeking guidance from their parent, even though the parent, for example, I don't know, 70 years old, and my client is around 45 years old, and she will not be able to make decision because during her upbringing, everything is being made, those decisions is just being made on her, right? We couldn't take any questions. That's what our parents says. So I'm just reading the comment sections. Don't ask, we're controlled by what we do, what we say. They decide for us until the day we are able to leave the house. That's true. There's a lot number of children is experiencing that, and that's creating some unresourceful strategies later on in the track. Right? All right. Oops. So, oops. Okay. So let's go to the next session, which is healing trauma. All right. Now, just as a caveat, this is not the only way for you to heal trauma. There's many other things. There's many other methods to healing trauma, right? Because it will depend upon how are you impacted with your trauma. Are you still living in the past fully, or are you still functioning on a certain level and you'll be able to move forward, right? But one of the key in terms of healing your own trauma is understanding, and awareness is the key. Awareness is the first step to any transformational changes. All right. Without the awareness, then we'll just stay within our comfort zone. We will just stay with our patterns. If you have, and for me, one of the most insightful for me is this: if you keep repeating the same problems, the same patterns all over, year on year or months on months, probably years, right? That means you are stuck with your trauma reaction. If you have those fight patterns all over, you're putting walls, you freeze, and all kind of stuff, that means you have those trauma patterns within you, right? Now, how do, and aware, the first thing is awareness. The second thing is you want to do the work, but you need to do the work. Otherwise, you're just gonna, you're just gonna sit there and not doing it, and you're just comfortable, right? So how do we bring awareness to yourself? One, and this is these four things are the one that are working for me, that I've been using it on myself. So I would like to encourage or share with you on how I'm doing it. First of all is journaling, bringing unconscious to conscious. And we use those triggers as a guide. So I'm just reading the commentaries here. I find that Christina's point about relying on adults, or even just the most adult person in the room, should be reflected because we usually become the authority figure ourselves at one point. Yep, Lukman, would you like to expand more on that?
Yeah, because the summary is that yeah, okay, based on what Khadija said and some of the things that Graciela mentioned, like it's easy to put ourselves in the position as being, oh, I was the victim, quote unquote, of an authority figure, without, hopefully, without reducing the significance of anyone's experiences, because some of us do go through some serious, quote unquote, abuses of authority. But we do eventually, I think, at some point, take their place, and we can either learn from the lesson, or otherwise accept that, well, this is the way of the world, and so it means I get to play that part someday. That's not easy, but
yes.
Again, it's why I'm so amazed at people who can see compassion as the solution, to accept that, hey, maybe this is not how they wanted things to turn out, but that was just circumstance. I think Emmy also commented on that. Sidki, definitely you showed how you dealt with your situation.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that, Lukman. I remember a few years ago when I had the first, when I was about to be a parent, I said to myself, I would like to have a different parenting relationship with my kids, right? I want to be the best father for my children, being the best husband for my wife, etc., etc. Knowing is one thing. However, I remember I would still get triggered fairly easily because of one thing or another. And that, when I'm looking and compare how I raised my daughter, for example, and how I'm raising my 5-year-old and 3-year-old now, is almost 180 degrees different. My kids can come up to me with many other different things. I hardly get triggered easily. I still have those trigger emotions, right? But then I was able to just pulling myself back and create that space within me, and then respond accordingly. So let's go on to this one here rather quickly. So journaling, making sure you're bringing your unconscious to conscious level. And one of the things is this: use trigger as a guide, right? And you will see that you need relationships, and relationships is one of the pathway for healing. Relationship is one pathway for healing, especially parent to child relationships and spouse or partner relationships, right? Because there's many things that children will do that will just push your buttons, and those are the triggers, right? You'll be able to know that. So whenever you're journaling, what I would highly recommend to do is this: write down the event, what happened. I would highly recommend do journaling on a daily basis, or at least every 2 days. Write down what happened, and then write down what was the trigger for you. What do you feel in your body? What do you feel emotionally? And especially, what are the things that you say to yourself? What are the language that you put on yourself? Am I feeling shame? Am I feeling that, hey, my child doesn't listen to me, they should have listened to me? I'm feeling that my kid doesn't respect me. It's all about whatever happened, right? So write those down. Okay, there's a few comment coming in. I'm just listening to what he did just say. Oh, Khadija, sorry, I just saw that commentary. Is it normal that I'm all crying because everything is all relatable to me? And that is totally okay, Khadija. That means it's hitting something underneath there that needs work, right? When I was doing all this work in my inner child healing for the past 12 months, I kept crying so many times, because it's just hitting that amygdala, that feeling, that emotions just need to be let out. So one of the things, sorry, just going on tangent again. One of the things about emotion is emotions that are buried will become like a snowballing effect, right? it will become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it will hit you at a certain point in your life saying, you know, what's going on? Because for me, I never felt this way previously. Before I joined in my previous company, I never feel that way. Never been that amplified. It just hits me right now. Like, you know, I'm in my 40s right now. So healing, part of the healing, whenever you hit that emotion amygdala, you will feel that feeling of wanting to cry, wanting to let that anger out and all that kind of stuff. So that's totally normal. Yeah, how do you deal with, sorry, I'm just reading a question again from Khadija. How do you deal with your spouse if he's also have traumas? It feels like there are two broken people in his household. And thank you for sharing that, Khadija. And I can totally understand about that. And one of the things about trauma is everyone have that. Everyone have that, right? It's like it's something that is I think because we have now the big T trauma and the small T trauma, it is likely to be there, right? And how do you, you know, if your spouse is coming with a trauma and being reflected and all that kind of stuff, and you are starting realizing it, one of the way that I can recommend is start your healing journey. You know, have a discussions, have a sessions with coach who will be able to guide you through that, right? Or at least start doing the thing that I'm proposing for you to do in this particular page. Okay, but then this journey alone is going to take some time, some process, right? It's not going to be, you know, you write a journal one day and then tomorrow you become like a whole new person. It takes some time. It takes awareness, subconscious effort. Okay. So journaling, bring unconscious to conscious. And another one to bring unconscious to conscious is share your childhood experiences with your trusted person. It can be a spouse, it can be a therapist, it can be a coach, or anyone else who's doing that. For example, if you have those trauma experience at workplace, share, ask your boss if you're comfortable enough having those relationships. Ask your boss that I'm trying to do work emotionally. I would like, you know, one of the things that I'm working on is perfectionism, and I need just, you know, validations and all kind of stuff on my progress on how I work and all kind of stuff. So I'm currently doing that with my manager, right? And fortunately, she is awesome in that space because she has a background in psychology as well. And in terms of relationships, so one of the things, Khadija, perhaps this is relatable for you, is ask your spouse what makes you feel safe, right? In that manner. So you need to communicate in terms of what makes me feel safe. You also need to ask that reciprocal questions, what makes you feel safe? The other one is practice deep breathing and create that space for yourself. So what I encourage my clients to do when I do the deep breathing or during the coaching session is, you know, 4 deep breath in, right? To your chest, to your belly, and then 4 seconds holds, and then 8 seconds out, exhale. So I'm trying to teach this to my kids as well. And my 5-year-old is doing this. And then he's currently teaching my 3-year-old to do that. So it is very easy to do. And what happens is it will calm down the amygdala when it's being flooded. So take around 5 to 10 breaths, right? It will create that space. And then once you come down, then you'll be able to connect with your prefrontal cortex. And then you do the action, you'll be responding to the events rather than being reacting to the events, right? Now, I just have one final example. During those, during the lockdown last year, my 4-year-old, my 5-year-old, back then was 4-year-old, he was, showing his big emotion that he wants to come with me. When I say to him, look, daddy is going to go for a meeting. I'm going to my room. I'm going to let myself in the room. And then he suddenly cried so much. I was like, what is going on here? I didn't expect it to be. And I have 10 minutes left to my meeting. And then what I did was I tried to calm myself down. I only have 10 minutes. I know if I lock the door, he will just keep bouncing, kicking the door. And what I did was I sit down with him, I calm him down, I connect to his amygdala, I connect with him emotionally. Once he's calmed down, and that process only takes 2 minutes. When he comes down, then I connect with his prefrontal cortex, right? And then just say to him, look, I need to go. Is it okay if I go? He comes down, he let me go, right? Let's go to the next one because we only have a few minutes left. All right. So for anyone who doesn't know me, hold on, I'm just reading another comment from Lukman. Another exercise someone recommended was to look into yourself, smile, and greet yourself. How are you today? It's good to see you again. Yes, that's another a good exercise as well, Lukman. Yeah, it's just to have that conversations, being honest with ourselves, right? Being honest with ourselves. So let me recap about my story. So I grew up in Indonesia, and I moved to Melbourne since I was 14 or 15 years old, and I lived on my own. Okay. So one day after I finished year 9, my parents asked me whether you would like to continue schooling in Melbourne, in private school in Melbourne, in private Islamic school in Melbourne. So I said, yes, I'll do it. It's like the old adage of say yes and figure out how. And feel the fear and do it anyway. So I think I'm adopting that since I was early. So as I said, I'm the son of busy entrepreneurs' parents. My parents were having a restaurant business, real estate business, so they hardly have enough time for me when I was growing up. However, during when I'm growing older, I have great relationship with them. Alhamdulillah. So I got married and I was divorced. 4 years later, I have a teenage daughter now, so she's around 13 years old. And then I got remarried. So right now is 8 years and counting. I have 2 sons. So the one on the left is Yasin. The one on my lap is Yasin. The one on my wife's lap is Yusuf. The one on the back is my daughter Shafa. So I have a bachelor degree in commerce management and master's in business system. So that was based in Melbourne. And I also have 15 years working in Australia. So most of them are tier 1 company. I work in the tender and supplier management across IT, telco, facility management, manufacturing. I'm currently working for a global resources company in oil and gas and now mining. Okay, and also have tried a number of entrepreneurial pathway. Was a commercial and portrait photographer, including families, and so including weddings, and also a cafe owner. And then past 1 year, I have a life and career shift. 10 years ago, when I attended an Islamic leadership development in KL, one of the things that I wrote down was I want to be to help people to become the better version of themselves. But I have no idea how. And I didn't understand at that time that those leadership training is a coaching training. And I just didn't, it registered in my mind until last year. So I decided that I want to become a coach. I'm a part of the professional coach with the Coaching Institute of Melbourne, and also a registered member of International Coaching Guild. So I work primarily with fathers, young adults, and also leaders. So I'm a mindset and behavioral coach to them. And also in the process now to be a coach within the global company that I work for as well. Okay, in Rio. Okay, in the company. Okay, and my interest is in building emotionally intelligent families and young adults and leaders to become aware of their emotions and use that as a source of strength rather than a source of heaviness and weight and becoming a source of weakness. Right? EI is one of the EI or EQ are now being held as one of the key differentiators than just IQ. Right? So the program that I'm offering is one-on-one coaching and mentoring, also group coaching and mentoring, also hold workshops as well. So I work on an ad hoc basis, or also on a program basis, or on a 3 months program. Okay. So one of the things that I believe, and this is part of my motto, I guess, tagline, the one that I believe is, I want to build emotionally intelligent societies from the ground up. Now, for those of you within the from the Islamic faith, the hadith that becomes my fuel is this. It is the hadith that says the 3 things that will benefit you after you're passed away, for your death. One is having children who are pious, who's looking after you, who are making dua for you. The second one is knowledge that are beneficial. The third one is sadaqah, that is also beneficial, right? So that's why I'm doing this work. I want to become an enabler to help others to have the best legacy in their life, right? So that's what I'm my life mission right now. So I'm trying to move pathway from my commercial or my mining industry work to become full-time in this room, inshallah. So this is just one of my few of my clients, but one of the things that I love the most is when I receive the feedback, or the feedback from one of my father client. He approached me because he had difficulties in terms of connecting with his 9 and 11-year-old kids, and after 3 sessions, he gave me this brilliant feedback. Look, he's now able to connect with his children. He's understanding more about them. He break free from his old pattern, because he didn't know how to connect with them. And then basically we just work together on a one-on-one coaching. So that's what I do. And it just lights my world when I receive that feedback. Alhamdulillah. Sorry. All right, gift time. I have a few things to give out. Hold on. Sorry, just let me. I have one of the things that I can share with you guys is this. Hold on a second. I have a booklet from a wisdom of trauma from that is kind of coming up for with Gabor Mate. There's a companion booklet about trauma work. Okay, so I would like to send this one through to you guys. You can save it. I'm not going to send it to email or whatever. You can just download it. Okay, this will give you some insights in terms of trauma at the more technical level. It's only very short. What I highly recommend, there's a few other resources at the end where I can recommend in terms of how you can deep dive into this. All right. And the other one is I will give, sorry. I'm more than happy. I'm going to give out a free one-on-one sessions value at $150 per session to 5 people that is in this call. At the moment, just do a booking through that link, and then we'll have a discovery call. A discovery call is basically just having a 15 minutes, 30 minutes conversations about where you are, where do you want to go, etc., and whether we are a good match. whether we are a good match as a coach and a client, right? And the other one is I'm going to launch a group coaching for families and young adults. If you are interested to get a 25% launch discount, please register your interest using that link. Cool. And this is the additional resources that you can use to deep dive even further in terms of trauma works. I love all those books. I haven't read the Body Keep the Score yet, but I heard a lot of amazing reviews on that. Okay, so How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole Lepere, You Are Not Broken by Dr. Sarah Woodhouse, and then Trauma, Pedram and Nick, How Body Keep the Score, and When the Body Says No, Dr. Gabor Mate, he's brilliant. The last one is I would highly encourage you all to watch the Wisdom of Trauma documentary. Just Google it. It's wisdomoftrauma.com. It's featuring Dr. Gabor Mate. It's very insightful work, especially if you're doing a lot of work in the society and trying to understand in terms of how trauma is impacting addictions and all that stuff. This is one of the best way. Yes, Sister Abdullah, I assume. Please consider doing a seminar on the opposite, highly socially, emotionally intelligent children for my 3-year-old. That is something that I'm intending to do. So I'm intending to do a number of workshops. Say, for example, the 5 love languages for children that's in the pipeline. That is amazing. I've been using that and practice that with my 5-year-old and 3-year-old and 13-year-old. The impact is beautiful. I have a much more, a deeper connection with my kids as a result of that. As a short story, for example, my 5-year-old, and sorry to go on a tangent, she's a dictator in the making at the moment. Marvelous. She's a boss. She's a potential leader. What you just need to change the director a little bit. Marvelous. I love that. Direct dictator in the making. But one of the one that I been working on with my 5-year-old, for example, his love language is word of affirmations and also acts of service. All right, and my 3-year-old is physical touch, and I adjust my communication with them accordingly. So, for example, if my 3-year-old is having those heavy emotions, what I would do is I approach him and I ask him, would you like to have a hug? Would you like to cuddle? Right? And then he will just cuddle me. Right? And then my 5-year-old, I just sit next to him and then just convey to him with words affirmations, saying, you're okay. I'm here for you. If you need me, just let me know. Okay? And because his acts of service, when I come back from work, he would do things like this. He would because I've been communicating with him on that, he would give me a glass of water without me asking. He would put a pillow on my back, and so many things, because that's the way he communicates love. That's the way he communicates love. He would just do an act of service without me asking. So look out for it. Keep in touch, right? I will do that hopefully next month, because a few people is wanting for me to run that. All right. We wrap up. Is there any other insights? What's coming up for you just before we close the session? Wa iyakum Abu Jannah, brother Abu Jannah. I hope that was useful for you, brother. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll let you everyone go. Have a great Sunday. Inshallah, have an enjoyable time with your families and friends. For anyone who are in lockdown, please be safe, be comfortable. If you need any support emotionally, feel free to reach out to me as well. Brother Saudad?
Great. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
No worries, bro. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Okay. Thank you, Emmy. Appreciate your ninja work. Amazing.
No worries. I shared with you the Word document of what you transcribed. So
beautiful.
feel free to
Thank
do
you.
with it what you need to. Take care.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.